just about every hobby out there is going to have a segment of its fans who kind of take it to the next level. The real geeks or nerds, the enthusiasts, as we like to say in the whiskey community, and whiskey is certainly no exception to that. We tend to get really caught up in the minute details of how a whiskey is made, how it's aged, bottled, all of the little nuances of a particular bottle of whiskey can get us really excited. And so maybe to the outside world, that seems a little bit silly at times, and maybe it is. But when you really love something, uh, it kind of happens. Like I said, every hobby is going to have those people who just like to geek out about the smallest details. There's a number of rabbit holes to go down in the terms of whiskey, and I am talking generally single malt Scotch here, although you can apply that to just about anywhere in the world if you really wanted to. And one of the best ways to do that when it comes to single malt Scotch whiskey is through independent bottlings, third-party companies that buy usually single casks, bottle them, usually a single cask, and usually at cask strength. This way we get to taste whiskeys that either aren't bottled as single malts or are bottled maybe at a presentation level that is less interesting for us, or to really kind of dig into maybe a distillery that we know we already love, but get to taste it in a more pure form, and not be vatted and blended with different types of casks and things. There's a number of different ways we can geek out about these things. And I've been wanting to talk about two bottles of Clynelish that I've had on my shelf for quite a while. And this is probably one of the geekier two bottles that I could possibly come up with that I've owned. And I want to talk about how similar they are, and actually, more importantly, just how different they are. Hello, welcome to Whiskey Uncorked. My name is Brian, and we're not doing whiskey reviews this week. I'm taking a little bit more of a relaxed and, of course, geeky approach, going back to my roots a little bit. I felt it was time to maybe do a video or two, maybe three, we'll see, about just my love of whiskey and kind of get away from fretting over scores or kind of the new hot release that everybody's really chomping at the bit to buy and wants opinions on whether they should drop the cash. All of that tends to be a little bit more stressful, I guess you would say. And it's not necessarily why I started the channel, but it is a good medium to talk about some larger issues. But I decided, let's take a break from that for at least a week and yeah, kind of just geek out a bit. So as I've mentioned before, independent bottlings have been a massive part of my Scotch whiskey experience. In fact, I pretty much ignored a lot of official bottlings and just focused on picking up independent bottlings really for a good chunk of the last 5 years or so. And that really kind of led me to kind of immediately kind of stopping what my intentions for this channel were and focusing more on official bottlings, because I realized there's some pretty big gaps in my overall knowledge. So I've spent most of the last year and a half now focusing on official bottlings. But independent bottlings are always going to be a fun, interesting alternative, probably where the real geekiness in me is always going to lie, just because of what they fundamentally are. And I have two bottles here that really exemplify that. These are things that I bought at separate times, but yeah, let's get into just how similar these things are. All right, so the first bottle, I picked this up in the Denver area when I was living there. These are signatory vintage bottlings, both of them are. This labeling, I don't know if they still do this labeling. I don't think they do. On their website, or signatoreusa.com, which doesn't even look like that site's been updated in a while, this labeling was listed as their 86 proof collection. Obviously, well, it will become obvious soon that that's not always the case, but this I picked up in Denver. This was Clynelish 1996, so there's a vintage on here. It is 20 years old, matured in a refill sherry butt. This was distilled on October 8th, 1996, bottled on August 1st, 2017, so just a little shy of 21 years. This is cask number 8788, bottle number 123. And this is indeed bottled at 43% ABV. It does say natural color on the label. However, we can probably assume that this was in fact chill filtered. All right, and the second bottle here. Now you have to kind of keep those details in mind. I'll have probably some graphics here trying to keep track of these, but this is also a signatory vintage bottling. It's in obviously the same labeling, but this is not 43%. This is cask strength. It does say cask strength here on the side. Cover my face up. Yeah, there we go. So keep track of the details here. This is also from 1996. This was also matured in a refill sherry, but it is 20 years old. This is also distilled on October 8th, 1996. This was bottled on September 5th, 2017. So a little over a month, right? Yeah, a little over a month after this one was. And this one is cask number 8789. If you remember, this was 8788. This is bottle 509 of 558. This was a selection. I bought this one in Chicago. This was at Binny's. At one time, I don't know if they still are, but a lot of their kind of exclusive casks were selected by the Winebow Group. So this was bottled at natural color as well. We can probably assume that this was not chill filtered, particularly being a cask selection. But as I mentioned, this is cask strength. This is bottled at 56.3% ABV. So we have two casks here that are from the same distillery, obviously the same bottler, the same distillery. The liquid in these two bottles was distilled on the exact same day, so quite possibly the same batch. They were bottled just about a month apart. They were both matured in your refill sherry butt casks, and the cask numbers are sequential. So I don't know this for a fact, but I like to think that these two spent most, if not all, of their lives sitting directly next to each other in the warehouse. So it's pretty easy to see why a whiskey enthusiast could get pretty excited over these two bottles. In fact, I'm very lucky to own them. These would definitely be much more expensive than what I paid for them a few years back. Now, so having one of these on the shelf is always a privilege, but getting both and getting to kind of taste them being 20-year-old Clynelish bottlings is, awesome. Being that Clynelish is one of my favorite distilleries in the world, despite my one review of Clynelish 14 on my channel being not so glowing, but that really came from a place of love and high expectations. But anyways, the reality is that this is a pretty rare opportunity, right? This is not something that a lot of people are going to get to be able to do. I have gotten to share these bottles with other people, and generally speaking, I believe pretty much every single one of them that has gotten to taste them side by side has had a pretty clear preference. That preference lines up with my preference, and yeah, you probably have a pretty strong opinion on which one that one is, but you would probably be wrong. So I'm not going to review these. I do have some of these poured out here, but yes, the 43% bottling is one of the best bottles of whiskey that is on my shelf, that has ever been on my shelf. It is definitely up there. I don't like truly ranking them, but this is an absolutely stunning bottle of Clynelish. The cask strength one is pretty damn good too, but it's pretty clear to, I guess, like I said, almost everyone, including people who I would tell you to trust their opinion much more than mine, as they are significantly more experienced. To a man, they have appreciated the 43% pretty clearly more than the cask strength. So expectations completely shattered, right? And there's obviously lessons that you can try to take away from this, or it just kind of is what it is, right? Let me grab, this is the 43%er. I'll just give you kind of a quick kind of nosing and tasting, but again, I don't have anything written down. This is just going to be off the cuff and pretty quick. Yeah, so this is just crazy, just Clynelish, and it's times these older like waxy whiskeys can kind of turn to a note that I almost find to be, I think I've kind of talked about this before, but it's almost like a briny, I always kind of refer to like fresh oysters, or the waxiness almost changes a bit from kind of the more young, kind of more clearly like paraffin wax, candle wax, that sort of thing. And it's almost not waxy anymore. It's almost kind of got this like fresh oyster kind of brininess that shows up. So today it is more just waxy. Uh, it is leaning that way, towards that kind of almost brine, but it's more kind of traditionally Clynelish waxy today. And at 43%, it's still very aromatic. These are refill sherry butts. They do have some decent color to them. Obviously, the 43% is a little bit lighter. It's been diluted more, so if they started out at the same color, uh, this is the cask strength one here. You see, it's got some decent gold. It's very similar to the copper on the label. It's a very similar color to that. But the sherry, there's really no hints of sherry in here. Maybe a little bit in the fruitiness. Maybe there's a touch of like red fruit in there, but it's very light. Otherwise, it's very kind of bourbon cask, uh, Clynelish like. So there is some sweetness. Anyways, don't want to get too bogged down in that. Quick taste. There's nothing on this planet that would convince me if that was on a blind. You could not convince me that that was not 46% at least, and non-chill filtered. Like there's nothing about it that says lower ABV, chill filtration. Again, I don't know for a fact that it's chill filtered, and if it is, it's not much. Because there are a little, I do get some flocking in the bottle. Some of those fats kind of congealing, gives you those little floaty things at the bottom. Um, doesn't affect the flavor or anything really all that much. Uh, Completely safe to drink if you're ever worried about it. Sometimes there can be bits of cask, but when they're kind of white and clear, they're usually just some of those fats and oils kind of congealing over time, or sometimes at colder temperatures, I guess. Anyways, so this might as well be 46%. We can always say, well, what if it was 46%? How much better would it be? And the answer to that is, I don't know. And at least when it comes to this bottle, uh, it's really hard to care. Yeah, it's very purely Clynelish, and that age just gives it 20 years in the barrel, just gives it such a roundness, a richness. The mouthfeel is fantastic. Chill filtration, chill filtered or not, I don't know. Like I said, it doesn't really matter at this point. But man, this is just an absolutely delicious example of Clynelish, and in signatory fashion. Usually, I always view signatory as an independent bottler that is trying to give you something that is very representative of the distillery. They very rarely do weird stuff. They seem to be doing maybe a little bit more experimental things with cask finishing and whatnot, particularly kind of in that 100 proof series that they've been doing. It looks like, kind of at least the last wave I was looking at, right? There's a lot of barrel finishing in there and things like that. Very interesting, very a series that's been lauded for its good value. Kind of in the face of rising prices, at least. But anyways, yeah, this 43%er, and this I wanted to keep it a small sip just because I haven't really drank any other whiskey today. My palate's not super tuned in right now, and I usually do save this for nights when everything is kind of singing top notch. I'll pull this one out, but absolutely fantastic. The 43% is completely irrelevant. Let's talk about the cask strength one. So this one, 56%. This one doesn't jump out of the glass as being quite as waxy. I know it is on the palate, obviously, at this point. I'm getting some pretty heavy, kind of like dry honeycomb. A little bit more oaky. There's a little bit of maybe a touch of dirty sherry in this, like a little bit of that kind of slightly kind of barrel char or creosote. But still, generally speaking, pretty light. Here we go. Yeah, this one definitely carries with it a little bit more, obviously, intensity, but this is definitely leaning much more on kind of the honeyed, um, and really, I think to some degree, the sherry casks are obviously a little bit more intense here, significantly higher ABV. So that's not, even if these came out of the same cask, you that wouldn't be all that unexpected. Still, a lot of really great Clynelish qualities here. Again, the mouthfeel is very good. This one I can actually feel some of the oiliness like on my lips and things. Didn't really get that with the 43. This one's much louder. It's a little bit sweeter. So I could absolutely see some people who really enjoy ABV, like things a little bit more on the sweeter side, could absolutely still prefer the cash strength version over this. But like I said, for me and anyone that I've had that's really gotten to taste these side by side, no, I don't think I did them blind with anyone. I think a lot of times with whiskeys, I just want to, they deserve to have the bias, right? If they're special bottles, like let's not do them blind. Let Especially if they're expensive, right? Get every penny of your money's worth, even if it is from a personal bias. But so I think everyone that's tasted these has gotten to taste them, knowing exactly what they were. But yeah, preference wise, this 43% um, is great, which is somewhat unfortunate for the cask strength because if I only had this one, I would probably think that this bottle was absolutely fantastic as well. But it's just compared to the 43, it just doesn't quite keep up, at least neat. So with bottles like this, I rarely add water to them. And when they get a little bit more special, I kind of want to experience them for what they are. But I do have some of the cask strength version with a decent splash of water in it to try to get it at least a little bit closer to the 43% ABV. Let's see how that's tasting. Still, I would probably definitely say much more honeyed or honeycomb than the 43 percenter. Maybe a little less sweet now, but still very, very much honeycomb forward. A little bit more of the pure kind of Clynelish waxiness on the finish. Definitely a little more readable. Hmm. I don't know if this is the first time I drank the cask strength with water in it. I think overall it was a bit of an improvement. It probably could take a couple more drops. Finish on this is probably the volume's much higher for longer. Again, if the 43 is chill filtered, maybe that's where it might show up. Wow. That's actually, yeah, that's fantastic as well. Again, no complaints. It always felt a little unfair to the cast strength version to just constantly have it live in the shadow of the lower ABV one. But at least for me, there's some lessons to take away. Right, obviously you can't just look at something at being 43% and chill filtered and just completely dismiss it as there's no chance that it's going to be good because that just frankly isn't true. No, the thing is, if I were to walk into a store today and I were to see two contemporary bottles exactly the same as this, having the knowledge that I have, if you only let me buy one of them, I could only take one. Which one am I going to take? The cast strength or the 43%? I mean, I'm probably going to take the cast strength one. It just gives me a little more control over the overall experience. Again, I can play with water if I really want to bring it down. And I know I'm getting a little bit more of just the full experience, but there is always that risk that just because something is 43%, if I ignore it because of that, uh, you could miss out on one of the better bottles of whiskey um, that you might never taste for that matter. But it is still always difficult. It would just have been better if this was bottled at 46% ABV and just non chill filter. Then I don't really even have to think about it too much. Then I can just look at this as a kind of a more kind of mass appeal product. And, you know, I don't have to like necessarily hold that against it. I still know I'm going to get a pretty full and accurate representation of what that whiskey was. Even though a cast strength would have been even better. So I spent most of the last couple of days knowing I was going to shoot this video, and I was trying to think of something like, what's the point? What's going to be the end point of this? And the reality is, there never was going to be a point. This was just a fun experiment that I was very lucky to be able to kind of just experience, I guess. I was very fortunate. Again, bought these in two cities about 1,000 miles apart, probably about a year apart, and it just happened to fall that way. If you ever get the chance to do this, whether they're equal ABVs or both cast strength or not, either way, very interesting. And then getting to kind of compare and contrast something that has been diluted and chill filtered. It's just a fun experiment. Yeah, I can't really take this and apply it to every single experience that I'm ever going to have. In fact, Signatory, I believe they announced a few years ago, I think it was on one of the Oswas, where they were going to stop diluting things past 46% down to 43, and they were going to stop chill filtering. They were not going to release those products anymore. So if you see one of these kind of copper and eggshell type, slightly yellow bottlings, very kind of would be like 70s, kind of Art Deco. Anyway, um, that might not actually be true. That's the type of thing where I know just enough to say something that's really stupid, um, which I guess you could say about whiskey as well. Anyways, it's completely derailed my own thoughts. But if you ever get the chance to do something like this, take it. But yeah, I can't really take this and say, well, that's going to be the case every single time. This is a one-off, a geeky thing. Maybe this is the one time out of 100 where the 43% bottling would be better. I don't know. Just because if you could taste these, you might absolutely think that the cast strength was clearly the better option. But for me, my palate, the 43 taught me some lessons, not to get overly upset at 43% ABV. 3% ABV isn't that big of a difference. It's really the chill filtration, I think, that most of us probably really have an issue with. It's kind of a moot point now. This was fun. But yeah, let me know if you guys have had any super kind of geeky or nerdy experiences that you remember, whether they're very similar casks or maybe even getting to taste the same whiskey out of the same cask, maybe in different levels of dilution or even filtration for that matter. What was your like ultimate kind of whiskey nerd moment? But thank you again for watching. I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, all of that stuff. I really do appreciate it. But until next week, maybe we'll have a review, maybe another one of these. We'll see.